Now, joining me now, Alex Ryvchin is the co-chief executive, obviously, of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry. Alex, good to see you again. Let's go first to the news overnight, Israel and the decision to launch what the president has called preemptive strikes against Iran. He made a very strong speech in justification for those attacks. I don't think anyone could argue that it wasn't the right thing to do. What did you make of it?
Well, look, this is an act born of necessity, as you said. I mean, Iran is getting closer and closer to a nuclear breakout. Earlier in the week, the UN's atomic agency confirmed that Iran had violated the terms of its non-proliferation. We've seen for a period of about 20 years, Israel and its allies, particularly the US, taking interim measures to try to stall the progress of their nuclear program. Things like cyber assaults, things like picking off their nuclear scientists, and limited military attacks. And the intelligence was showing that they were days or weeks away from a nuclear breakout. And that is something that would be catastrophic, primarily to Israel, who the Iranian regime regularly pledges to wipe off the face of the earth, but also to the world. I mean, you look at what Iran has done over the past just few years under the threat of acquiring nuclear weapons, the havoc it sowed in Syria by propping up the Assad regime, what it's done by ripping Lebanon apart by supporting Hezbollah. It's controlled the Houthis and what that's done to shipping in the region there. So it got to a point where Israel had to act. It's acted decisively. I think we'll need to wait for the dust to settle figuratively and literally to understand the extent of the attack and how far it set back their nuclear ambitions. But we know the top 3 generals in the Iranian army have been knocked off. 2 of their leading nuclear scientists, the majority of their nuclear facilities have been hit. And I think this would be a real game changer in the region. I think something that was badly needed and certainly acts in the interest of peace in the long term.
Alex, Penny Wong, the Australian Foreign Minister, who I think's had a pretty poor couple of weeks, if not couple of months, she has said, oh, look, you know, we need to urge caution. Here she is.
This risks further destabilising a region that is already volatile. We call on all parties to refrain from actions and rhetoric that would further exacerbate tensions.
We also played some comments from the Prime Minister earlier. I'm just not sure they quite are across exactly how important what's happened overnight actually is.
Look, you know, the Foreign Minister is concerned, as are we all, about the prospects of an escalation. And I can tell you that the Australian Jewish community, with deep personal and family ties to Israel, is very concerned right now about the possible retaliation, about our family and loved ones huddling in bomb shelters right now. No one wants to see escalation. But what Senator Wong also spoke about in that press conference was that the world needs to stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. But what she didn't talk about, and no one seems to talk about in the Western world, is how we're going to do that. And we've seen a drawn-out political diplomatic process for a long time, which we now know Iran merely used to obtain sanctions relief and deepen its grip on the Middle East and continue its covert nuclear program. And ultimately, it takes the daring and the conviction and the strength of the Israeli military to do what the world wants to see done, which is the restraint of the Iranian regime. And foremost, I hope the beneficiaries will be the Iranian people themselves. You've got a wonderful Iranian diaspora in this country and around the world who loathe that regime and what it's done to a once prosperous and mighty country. And I hope that these attacks will precipitate the end of that regime and the restoration of a peaceful and modern and safe Iran.
Alex, I want to ask you about these sanctions the Australian government has applied against 2 Israeli ministers. Last night we had former Labor MP Michael Danby, who designed these laws, effectively slamming Penny Wong for using them against a democratic state. Israel's finance minister has also accused Australia and 4 other nations of making, quote, a grave mistake here. What do you make of this?
Well, I'm always reluctant to agree with anything Smotrich says. He's very much not my kind of guy. But I am happy to agree with Michael Danby, my old friend. And he's correct that the reason that these sorts of sanctions were introduced internationally, the Magnitsky-style sanctions, they're named after, you know, a Russian anti-corruption activist who was tortured and died in custody. And it's to basically restrain political figures in despotic, autocratic, non-democratic countries who commit horrific human rights violations like killing political dissidents. Now, in this case, again, I'm not minded to defend Ben-Gvir or Smotrich. I think they say some really objectionable things, but the foreign minister said that they're being sanctioned because of their rhetoric, because of words they've said about activities in the West Bank and encouraging settler violence. Now, that would be my assessment, I think in Michael Danby's as well, a severe lowering of that threshold. And it begs the question, who else and in what other democratic allied countries are we going to start identifying firebrand minor politicians like these guys and sanctioning them over things they've said rather than things they've done, which was the intent of the legislation?
Alex, great to catch up. Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday night.